Developing an unusual one-off property is never an easy task, especially for a first development. Overcome those challenges and you could rake in thousands.
Tonight I'm with two sets of developers who think they've hit gold with their unique and interesting properties, despite their extremely awkward locations.
Well, I bought this property and I didn't have a problem with the entrance coming off the car park.
Two quirky properties with developing potential. The question is just how much are people willing to actually pay to live on a noisy road or off a busy car park?
Tonight's developers are going to have to really pull something special out of the bag if they're going to make the massive returns that they want.
This is Bourne in Lincolnshire. This market town is half an hour from Peterborough and popular with both families and young professionals. And it's here that Jackie Copland and John Burrows plan to become property developers. Jackie is a fitness instructor, whilst her new partner, John, owns a painting and decorating business. With his expertise, they're hoping to make a fortune on this Grade 2 listed house.
We've been together for 3 months now. There'll be a bit of conflict at times, no doubt.
John's the calm, settling one. I'm the mad,
Balmy one.
balmy one.
Yeah.
Jackie bought the property 2 years ago at auction, thought about turning it into flats, but never got started. However, since meeting John, she's really got into the project and together they've hatched a new plan.
We think keeping it as a house as opposed to 3 flats financially is going to be more rewarding, because if it goes to budget, the budget isn't going to be probably quite as high. We want to take it back to its former glory.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of work to restore this 4-bedroom house back to its former glory. It needs rewiring, replumbing, redecorating, a complete overhaul, which isn't going to be cheap. When Jackie bought the house 2 years ago, it cost her £101,000. Their budget is £91,000, and they hope to sell it for £300,000. This will make them a huge £108,000 profit, which is a massive 56% return. Incredible if they can pull it off. They're certainly aiming high, but I think this house has a major problem. It's near impossible to find, and you can't access it from the front. The only way to get to it is by going through a car park at the rear, which makes it far from ideal for the family market they're aiming at.
Hi, hello,
Hiya.
I'm Sarah.
Nice to meet you.
God, difficult to find.
Hi, Sarah, John.
The front of the property is on the main street, but is now a separate block of offices, and the part of the house Jackie's bought is set behind. But that means that you can only get to it via the car park at the rear. The house itself is spread over 3 floors. On the top floor there's a double and 2 single bedrooms. Below there's another double bedroom and a bathroom. And on the ground floor there are 2 reception rooms and a tiny kitchen overlooking the garden.
So was it a bit of an impulse buy?
Probably. I'm a little impulsive, so yes, I suspect marginally it would have been, yes.
So you didn't have a survey done, did you?
No.
I knew you hadn't by the look on your face. And so what are your plans?
Well, we've
Wow.
had a few, actually.
We're back on plan A, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, basically just to restore it back to a house again.
The old house.
Jackie and John want to make this house really luxurious. On the top floor, they plan to create a second double room with ensuite. The layout on the middle floor stays the same, though they're fitting a new luxury bathroom. On the ground floor, they plan to fit a loo and open up the rear extension, creating one big open-plan kitchen living space. They're hoping to make a good quality, well-finished house that will appeal to families, but I'm not sure it's the best solution. In my opinion, they should stick to their original plan and convert it into 3 flats. On the ground floor, they'd get a good-sized 1-bedroom apartment, with a smaller starter flat on each of the floors above.
Tell me the thought processes that you went through with turning it to flats and not turning it into flats.
The ground floor would have made it an OK flat, but the 2 middle floors would have really only been bed sets.
I hear what you're saying about these being small, but I think if they're well laid out and well designed, I've got to say I would be going with your initial plans myself. I think it's the right way forward.
I agree, there's more of a market for flats.
But if we do one bedroom in each of them.
But I do think it's a bit of a... And I take on board all that you said, but I think it's going to be quite a nice house, really central, but have its own sort of private garden.
But this house will never be an ideal family home. Apart from the car park issue, the front door is stuck down the side of the building.
So this is going to be your front door here into the house?
Yep.
I think as a communal doorway into 3 flats, this wouldn't be a problem, but it's not the ideal main entrance for a house.
No.
I still don't see the problem with the door, OK, being on the side, the back, wherever, whatever you want to call it. It suits the house.
I think that most people who are going to part with £300,000 would be wanting a front to their house.
I think these are big problems because there's a danger families just won't want to buy it. Jackie and John should really think about this. The central location will appeal more to young professionals than families, which means flats will sell quicker, and I think they'd make the same amount of money. But John and Jackie are absolutely sure a house is the way forward.
It hasn't, changed a thing. No, what she's told us isn't anything we haven't heard already.
And at the end of the day, the house will be quality, and all we need is that one buyer.
It's a bold and risky decision, but these two are nothing if not confident. 185 miles northwest in Lancashire, 2 more hopeful developers are equally convinced that they can make big returns on another unique and difficult property. Quantity surveyor Simon Gore and his friend contracts manager Paul Hilton bought this 18th century derelict watermill 5 months ago. With their professional knowledge, they're confident that they can turn this rundown mill into a luxury rural retreat. But it's going to take an awful lot of work to transform these 2 narrow rooms and a huge hole in the ground into anything even remotely luxurious.
We brought friends up and they've looked and gone, you're going to convert this. But obviously we can tell what it's going to be at the end, and so...
Yeah, we've got the foresight to see what it can be. It's not a semi-detached, it's a one-off, a complete one-off. There's nothing like this round here.
It certainly is a one-off. And like John and Jackie, they're aiming high in the profit stakes. They bought this mill for £150,000. The plan is to turn it into a desirable 3-bedroom rural retreat on a budget of £110,000. They hope to sell it for £360,000, making them an impressive £100,000 gross profit. That's a huge 40% return, again fantastic for a first ever development.
If we achieve £100,000 profit, we'd be absolutely delighted. Any profit really, we'll be happy, but obviously the more the better.
Yeah, money is definitely the incentive, and if we muck things up, he's going in the hole.
As in Bourne, the idea of making a huge return seems to be blinding Simon and Paul to the reality of what's ahead. Because, also like Bourne, this property has one major disadvantage: its location. Right on a very noisy main road. In fact, it's one of the most popular biker routes in the country, which is going to make this a very tricky location to overcome. In Bourne, John and Jackie have started ripping out the insides of the house to turn it into a fabulous family home. But no matter how good their renovation, with a location like this, will any buyers even bother to get past the garden gate? Jackie Copland and John Burrows are off to a flying start on their first development, this rather awkward property in the middle of Bourne. Week 2 and they're stripping everything out in order to turn it into a luxurious family home. But I think they should think again about whether they're doing the right thing. What Jackie needs to do is take a long, serious look at her competition.
Now, I just want one last shot at trying to convince you to turn your house into flats, as you had originally planned. So it's your wisdom, not mine.
Yes.
Bourne is very much a family area. There's fantastic schools, and I think that there are a lot of family houses for sale. These are some details of some houses that have sold on this road. That one has just sold for 275,000, and it's got 4 bedrooms. It's got a good-sized front garden, front door, back door. It's a more traditional sort of deal, really.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's very much a semi.
And this house is on the market for 310 just here, but that hasn't actually sold. That's the one that's double fronted, and it's that one. It's just there, and it's detached.
Yes, I mean, it's a typical house. There's lots of them, yes,
Yeah.
which is where I would still put mine in favour that it's slightly different.
Your house at 300,000, it's only 3 bedrooms. It isn't the best access up to the house, and I think there is a danger that it might sit on the market for a bit. As 3 flats, it's less of a risk.
I know that it's going to be done well, it'll look right at the end of it, and at the end of the day, it'll fetch what it's worth.
Jackie's mind is well and truly set on the luxurious family home plan. Her budget includes £41,500 for all labour and materials, £11,100 for electrics and plumbing. They've got £11,500 to spend on the kitchen and bathroom, £9,300 for decorating, tiling and finishes. They're planning to spend £5,400 on the garden, another £7,000 in fees. And with a £5,000 contingency, their total budget comes in at £90,800. Having kept the same budget they had for the original flats, it's a substantial budget for a 3-bedroom house. But the property is Grade 2 listed, and as Jackie didn't get a survey before she bought it, John has wisely ensured that they have a generous budget to cover any hidden costs. And sure enough, within the first 2 weeks, the Conservation Department have pointed out that they must replace any rotten windows, like for like.
There's basically 14 windows on the building, of which we really have had to change 10 of them because there was so much rot. Now, if we was, able to have put in a modern window, we could have possibly done that for £350 a window, where the fact that we are doing as the listed people have asked us to do and get these manufactured as a replica of what was here before, your perhaps true figure by the time it's actually in is around £1,200 a window.
That's a lot of money, and it's not the only additional cost. Instead of just replacing one wall as planned, building regulations require they rebuild the entire back section of the kitchen extension. These extra structural costs can't be avoided, so if they want to maximise their profit, they need to cut back in other less essential areas. But John and Jackie have their sights set on creating a top-class luxury home with no expense spared.
This is going to be, obviously, complete quality when it's finished. Yeah, some things cost a lot more than other things, but at the end of the day, it's going to be it's what makes it, and it's going to make the property so much nicer when they walk through the door. It's going to be
fantastic.
Yeah.
In Lancashire, Paul and Simon are hoping to also turn their derelict watermill into a luxurious home. But with a busy road to contend with, I wonder if they've bitten off more than they can chew.
You've chosen a very unique and unusual property as your first development that has massive challenges. Because not only have you got the road to deal with, you're taking on a restoration, working below ground level. There's a whole load of issues which will be complicated in themselves. But to be doing this as a sort of first off is brave, maybe a little mad.
What we're intending to do is use our professional knowledge, and hopefully it'll benefit us when we get into the thick of the project.
And the other main issue is going to be timing on this, because you want to finish it in 5 months. And I think it's essential that you do, because the danger is if you don't, you're going to miss that September, October market, and you'll be into the winter, and trying to sell this house in the winter, I think is going to be quite hard work.
We could, if we needed to, reduce the amount of profit we're looking at and throw more money at it and get more labour in.
That would be a very, very last resort, that would be. And if it means us resourcing it in a way that we have to put more hours in to get to where we need to be, well, that'll be the case.
So you'll work nights?
The baby will be here with a paintbrush, everything.
Paul and Simon have got major plans for their mill. Currently, it consists of 2 rooms on the ground floor with a hole in the ground below where the water wheel used to be. They intend to build stairs down and waterproof this space, which will become a master bedroom with ensuite and French doors onto a sunken patio. Above this will be a kitchen diner and a sitting room next door. They are also building a new 2-storey extension alongside the original building, which will house a bedroom and bathroom on the ground floor and 3rd bedroom upstairs. Getting all this done in just 5 months is going to be really tough, and before they can even get started, they suffer their first setback. Heavy spring showers initially put the project back 3 long weeks. The location of this property keeps working against them. Not just the busy road, nor being in one of the wettest parts of the country, but it just happens also to be situated in a place of historical interest. The first recorded watermill was built on this site 800 years ago, which means that when the rain finally stops and work starts, they need to have an archaeologist oversee all the excavation work. There's a real danger that if this site turns up anything of interest, it could hold the project up by months. Paul and Simon now have to spend 2 agonising days watching one man digging around with a trowel.
Are we getting along?
There's obviously a lot of rubble been dumped in this area.
I take it that there's nothing that will stop us really carrying on.
No, I don't think
There's
so.
no delays or anything?
No, it's all pretty late. There's quite a good wall there, but I think that's probably 19th century. Should be no problem, really.
Fine, fine. Right.
That's the good news, and at last they can get cracking on the site. But no sooner does the digger get going, there's another hitch. Clearing tons of old concrete out of the mill race and the side extension foundations is a much bigger task than they thought, and takes them 2 weeks longer than predicted.
Currently we're approximately 4 to 5 weeks behind programme due to the weather. That's cost us alongside the breaking out of the concrete. And it is frustrating because we want to get on.
We'll both hold our hands up and say it's been harder than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And I think if we were both to be honest, we'd both say we'd much rather have opted for a new build.
But I think the delays are the least of Paul and Simon's worries. Adapting the 18th century mill for 21st century living is a real challenge. And with the layout that Paul and Simon have planned, they'll end up with a tiny pokey galley kitchen. That would be a real disaster for this development. I've come to convince them to change it while they still can.
You've got kitchen units both sides, haven't you? So once you've got your kitchen units, which come out 600, so they're going to be there, this side, and you've got your kitchen units, assuming it's there, you're going to be left with about 90 in the middle, which is going to feel very tight for a country retreat kitchen.
It's our intention to take this wall out here, which backs onto the living room being on the other side. And it's approximately 600mm thick, so we can actually reduce it in size, put a new blockwork wall up, which is 100mm thick, further that way.
So you'll take this wall down because it's so thick and rebuild it much thinner, giving you a bit extra space here. Personally, I think you're bonkers to take a wall down and build it up again. What I think you should seriously consider is if you're taking this wall down, not rebuilding it and leaving this space open plan. You could have kitchen in this area with an open plan to a dining area and then an amazing living room. And the sense of space you'd have would be really magnificent. And there needs to be something magnificent about this house.
Kitchens sell houses like no other room. And with the exterior of the mill less than ideal, they really do need to get the interior just right.
I can see what she was saying about giving it that open aspect. It'll make it all feel a lot bigger. If it's going to enhance the project and the saleability of the scheme, then we'll do it.
They sound convinced, but 3 weeks later, they've opted for a compromise. The wall is down, but they've decided to rebuild the fireplace in its original position, right in the middle of the room.
I think the position here of the fireplace is essential because with it being a long room, if we'd have had it at one end, you couldn't arrange your settees, I don't think, in such a way that it would be comfortable to get any heat from the fire. And at the end of the day, fires and televisions are probably a focal point in a room. I think it'll be a nice feature, that.
He might think it's a nice feature, but I think the chimney is a bit too dominant and could restrict the use of the space in here. Layout is as important in Bourne. John and Jackie need their house to feel like the perfect family home if buyers are to overlook the awkward location. They're now 6 weeks in and the kitchen extension is taking shape.
You've rebuilt this area here,
Yeah, yeah.
and this is going to be a kitchen breakfast room.
Yeah, kitchen diner.
Kitchen dining room.
Yeah.
Right, and where's the kitchen going?
Well, basically all around these walls here. I mean, that side's going to be the sink. It's going to be like a double Belfast sink, and then you've got base and wall units all around here. You've got a range and canopy there, and then you've got like a peninsula that comes off here with the fridge and freezer.
Right. Normally I would agree that put the kitchen at one end and the eating at the other end, but because it's very light, this area, and I think it's a shame to not have the table, which is the area that you sit in, near the lightest part.
I don't know if it's going to be that much darker over there. Do
No,
you with the
I mean, at the
ceiling
moment
high?
it's a little bit overcast.
I'm wondering whether it wouldn't be better to put kitchen units along here and all the way along this wall and along that wall, so that you leave the whole room open, and then you can have a table here, or it can push that way or push this way. That way, when you're sitting at the table, you'll see right out down the garden, you'll see out through these windows.
We did going all
we
that
did,
way
yeah.
with the units, didn't we? But
Yeah.
we felt we wanted a separate part, you know, rather than one just great big kitchen.
I think that if you put a peninsula unit of kitchen units, it just divides the room up and means that it's less flexible. It means that you have to have your table a specific size in a specific place.
John and Jackie are making the same mistake as Paul and Simon. Having created this open space, they're now dividing it up and they're breaking the basic rule of having a table overlooking the garden. They're spending £8,500 on this kitchen, so they should seriously consider the layout their market would prefer and not what they would prefer. But I'm not sure John and Jackie are really open to suggestions.
We've got no doubts about the layout of the kitchen that we've decided to go with.
No doubts whatsoever.
No doubts. No. It's an interesting thought, and that's all it is. You know, if the decision had to be made then there was no decision. It wasn't going to be changed.
Our layout, yeah, it offers all the flexibility that a kitchen should offer, but I think the added bonus of it being more functional than the layout that Sarah was offering, I think that's probably the advantage on ours.
Their minds are made up on the layout, but there are still so many details they need to get right.
So, have you had any thoughts as to what you're going to put on your worktops?
Yes, we have, haven't we?
Yeah.
Right. What have you thought?
We're on the lines of granite.
Right, and how much do you reckon that's going to cost?
It's going to be around the £2,500.
Which of the granites had you thought that you might use?
We kept going back to the mahogany. For the Joe public walking through the door, it's a pretty safe one to go with.
The problem with granite is that it has been around quite a long time, and I see granite in houses that are now being redeveloped. So the granite's being taken out, and especially actually this sort of the big sort of pinky, swirly granite. It's been around such a long time that it's sort of past its fashion in a way.
Yeah.
I personally would probably go for this Nero. I have put this one into a number of kitchens, and it does have a kind of simplicity which is beautiful and ends up looking a little bit like glass.
It's got a nice classy look to it, but I just think maybe a bit dark.
It might be worth going and having a look at a bigger piece of the one that you think you'd like to use. If you're going to spend that amount of money, you certainly don't want the worktop to arrive and think, don't sure about that.
No, we'll definitely have a look at that.
This seems to be one area they might be prepared to compromise on.
Good point she's made.
Yeah.
I like it very much, but I would like to see it.
On a bigger scale.
Yeah, so back
Yeah.
to the drawing board.
Yeah.
So after 8 weeks, John and Jackie's development is really coming along. They're on schedule, on budget, and enjoying every minute. They're hoping to smash ceiling prices for family houses in the area, but whilst I remain a little concerned about the location, fortunately Jackie doesn't seem to think it's a problem.
Some people probably won't like it, but I'm sure there'll be enough people out there that don't have a problem with it. I know it's not a traditional entrance coming off a road, but it also isn't a problem.
It's week 10, and in Bourne, painter and decorator John Burrows and partner Jackie Copland are giving their rather unique house a huge £90,000 makeover in the hope of making them over £100,000 profit. They're both on site every day project managing the job, and with John's trade experience, they hope to make this house look top-notch in order to get the highest possible price. It's good they're not cutting corners, but instead they seem to be going to the other extreme. They've decided to repoint the entire outside of the house, a massive job that could take up to 2 months, which will look smart, but it isn't strictly necessary. It seems like money is no object when it comes to getting the look they want.
We could have, saved money and put in a lesser kitchen, lesser bathroom, and done possibly less work here, but at the end of the day, you get what you pay for, and we're expecting, the people who buy this, they're going to get an absolute quality product, and
the people who will buy this will know that, won't they?
Oh, yeah.
The people that don't appreciate that won't buy it, won't pay that sort of money. We'll go and look elsewhere for something that's been done at a lower level.
My worry is that it won't matter how lovely the inside is if they can't convince the buyers to look beyond the car park. I want to help Jackie minimise that first impression.
Now, the reason that I wanted to talk to you out here is because I wanted to discuss the access situation of your house, which I think there are going to be some buyers who are going to have an issue with the access because it is sort of semi-industrial and it's unconventional, and some people are going to have a problem with that.
I can't see the big issue between how you find it so detrimental that it's a car park as opposed to a busy road.
I think it's the fact that it's got a feeling of the back of shops to it. The area out here you can't affect. It's going to be what it is. But maybe you should put the brakes on to a certain extent with the specification inside and really concentrate on the garden, because you can make it really effective, that area. How much are you planning on spending doing all of the garden?
I think we'd allowed about £5,000 in the budget.
10% of your total budget would be £9,000. And I think it would be reasonable to spend 10% of your budget on a garden this size.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost, but we'll make sure that it gets done properly and has the right look. So if it goes over the 5, then it won't be a problem.
I think you should put the garage, let's use this as the corner of the garage, about here.
You're having the garage doors facing me?
Facing you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So you'd have the garage, you'd come in and you'd be able to turn and go into the garage this way and reverse out.
Yep.
I think I'd be tempted to have electric gates on so that you can come in on a bleeper.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Then I think you need to have a fence so that it very much divides the parking from the rest of the garden. So you feel that it's a transitional area between the two, about here.
The next issue this garden has to address is that it needs to guide visitors to the main entrance on the side of the house.
The important thing with this garden is to try and lead people down to the side door so they use that as the front door and aren't tempted to use the kitchen doors as the front door.
Yeah.
So I think if you start as far as you can to the left and then you have the path twisting over to the right relatively quickly, because the only problem with a very curving path is people will tend to just cut the corners off and just walk across it anyway. Yeah. But then when you come down to this end here, you've got to keep people over to the right. And I would personally put a seating area here. So you put the table and chairs here, which actually obstructs this door so that people aren't in any way tempted to go through there. All of this is trying to force people down so that there's absolutely no question in their mind that they use the side door as the front door.
Yeah.
Jackie and I seem to be seeing eye to eye. Work starts almost immediately on the garden, turning it into something that will make buyers forget the car park as soon as they walk through the gates. In Lancashire, another unique property presents another garden challenge. Paul and Simon have spent the last 4.5 months trying to transform the hole in the ground into a watertight bedroom and getting the side extension well underway. But now they too really need to start thinking about the exterior. Too many first-time developers leave the landscaping too late. But with this location to contend with, Paul and Simon really need to start on the garden right now. Their current idea is to have the garden at the front of the house, but there is another option.
Obviously this area here will become a garden area, and from that side there we're going to have a bit of a patio and then soft landscape this with some screen planting in this position here.
Okay, I mean, that's the one thing I do feel about this area here, because, I mean, if you imagine, let me just get one of these. In reality, if this was your front garden, and the main thing you're going to see is the road.
That's why we want to introduce some planting in like this area here, some soft planting.
You don't have a big enough depth to do a really good screening, because even if you have bushes, you need thickness of bushes as well as good bushes. You need several bushes deep. One of the things I think maybe you should think about is landscape this, but have it as a front garden leading up to the kitchen door, and have your proper garden round to this area. If you come with me.
There's another area at the back of the mill that I think could be a much more effective garden.
You see, if you had your garden round here, and this, you could screen an enormous amount and have this as a really quite private garden, a back garden, a proper back garden, and have access out from the sitting room. You could have thick screening from kind of this point. You have several, 10 foot of good thick trees, which would make a big difference to the noise. Then you've got the ultimate in back gardens. You've got a private space that screens from the road with access from the sitting room.
Yeah, I agree. I think we definitely need somewhere where people can sit out and, a nice paved area and that.
Have a look next.
I'm relieved that Paul and Simon seem taken with this idea, as the garden really needs to help sell this property, which is another reason for getting the development finished before the leaves fall off the trees. But they're now 6 weeks behind schedule, and the mill will not be ready until winter, the worst time for gardens and the property market. With so much still to do, Paul and Simon are getting increasingly worried about how far off their autumn deadline they are. They're now spending all their spare time here and are roping in friends and family on top of the builders to catch up on time and help with the bigger jobs like re-roofing the mill before the rains return. But even with all these extra hands on deck, they're still 6.5 months into a 5-month project, and they're nowhere near finished. This delay is going to eat right into Paul and Simon's profit.
We're obviously not going to hit the deadline that we'd initially aimed for, and as a result of that, we're not going to get the property on the market at the time we were looking to do. That may mean that over the winter period, we've got a property that's sitting empty that we can't sell. At the moment, I think it's in the region of £1,000 a month that we pay out as far as interest payments are concerned on the property. So, it's a fairly hefty chunk of money. So the sooner we get the property finished, the better for everyone concerned.
In Bourne, John has kept everything successfully on schedule. The garden is well underway, and it's time to start decorating. As this part is John's speciality, I've come to find out what ideas he's got in mind.
Yeah. These are the colours that you're thinking of using, are they?
Yeah, just a starting point, really.
Okay.
At the moment, we're sort of still playing with colours, but we did quite like this one.
Right.
Purely because it's nice and warm and it sort of goes nicely with the brickwork.
Yeah. It does bring me on to the chimney breasts, and originally they would never have been exposed, and they're quite a big, bold statement in each of the rooms, and quite obtrusive. In terms of a development, it's enough of a statement to have the chimney breasts exposed without having another bold statement on the walls. I mean, I would be tempted to go along the lines of this sort of colour, because I think a more neutral tone.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what you do for a living.
Yeah.
What colour do you normally paint in?
Well, a lot of the new developments, they're all in magnolia and white.
And why do you think that is?
Basically, the builders do it for ease. They don't want to get involved with giving the customer a choice of colours.
The thing about a development is that somebody's moving into a house where they don't have to do anything, and they can live with magnolia because no one hates magnolia. You might think it's a bit dull, but you can't hate it. And And then you have the advantage of everyone can move their stuff in, and then they can think long and hard about what colour that they want to use.
But we have got a decorating business. We can change the colour if they really don't like it. So
you will be using some bold colour?
oh yeah, we will. Yeah.
John's falling into the old personal taste trap again. This property really needs to appeal more than ever to as wide a possible market, and he's contemplating colours he likes, which could actually put people off. Although he does decide to stick to neutral colours in the bedrooms, in the sitting room it's a different matter altogether.
I love this colour. It's not as dark as I thought it was going to be, which is probably
No, it's got a nice glow to it.
better.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Feel.
only the one window in here, so it's always going to be a slightly darker
Room.
So we just felt
Rather than
keep
try
it
and
that
make
way,
it
keep
light.
cosy.
Yeah. Hence the dark colour, but I think it's a great colour.
Once again, they've gone for something they like, but their buyers may not. And it's the same throughout the house. John and Jackie are so set on having a development they can be proud of that they're spending much more than's necessary. If they spent less, they could lower the asking price and still make the same profit. But from the chest-high tiles in the bathroom to the sandstone tiles downstairs, from the £8,500 kitchen to the blinds and curtains, they're certainly not holding back. Back at their house, going through the bills, they're still convinced they've made all the right choices to guarantee they'll get their massive asking price.
I don't think anything we've done has been an extravagance. I think it's just been right for the way we wanted it to be, to look.
You can't sell a house at the top end and put the bottom end products in there. Don't work.
In Lancashire, even though the project is moving forward, Paul and Simon are months over schedule, which means it's my final visit and they still have a long way to go. Though you can see how fantastic this unique property is going to be. The hole in the ground is halfway to becoming a master suite. The new side extension, which will eventually house 2 more bedrooms and a bathroom, is taking shape. Paul and Simon took my advice and have removed the wall between the pokey sitting room and kitchen, which will give them a much more effective open-plan sitting room when it's finally finished. All the delays have cost them thousands in extra interest payments, but Paul and Simon have been cutting back on labour costs by doing as much of the work they can themselves.
How is the budget at the moment?
At the moment, we spent somewhere in the region of £50,000, haven't we? And we've got, I'd estimate about, from what we'd said originally, about 60,000 still to go at. And I'm quite aware that there's some big items to come out of that, like the kitchen, 2 bathrooms to fit out.
Flooring, decoration. It's quite a lot of things to actually include in that, isn't it? The key is now you've got to make sure this looks absolutely fantastic when you've finished it.
Well, I've always had an eye on the quality side of things. If the product's not right, for the money we want for it, we won't get it.
With so much at risk, I've brought in agents at this stage to see if they can get their £360,000 asking price.
The only problem that I can see from first impressions is obviously the road.
We can't get away from the fact it is quite close to the road, but I think it's so unique and it's so nice that it may put some off, but certainly not all.
If finished to a high standard, I think this property could be worth £350,000.
I think this property could achieve £350,000.
We've had 2 agents in to value the house, and they say that when it's finished, they would expect it to be worth £350,000. They both agreed on that, actually, which, if you manage to stick to your budget, would give you a £90,000 gross profit, which is pretty good between you. I mean, it's £45,000 each.
That's my new car sorted.
We're mindful that when it is finished, it might attract a higher figure than that, and touch wood, it will do, you know.
Paul and Simon bought the mill for £150,000. If they come in on budget at £110,000 and do sell it for the predicted £350,000, they stand to make £90,000 gross profit, which would be a fantastic reward for all their hard work.
Do you think now, in hindsight, that this was perhaps a bit over-ambitious for a first development?
No, definitely not.
No, no.
Maybe we'll like a nice, straightforward new build next time, but you can't take away the fact it's been a challenge, and I think we've rose to it.
And it'll stand us in good stead.
What are you going to do with £90,000 profit?
Have a holiday and probably put some back in and start again.
Yeah,
Really? So, gluttons for punishment.
definitely. Onward and upward.
In Bourne, it's a different story. John and Jackie's development is firmly on schedule. But I think the biggest challenge will be convincing someone this house is worth £50,000 more than other three-bedroom properties in the area. Five months ago, the biggest problem this rundown house had was its awkward location. Now it's been totally transformed. By spending money on the garden and separating it off with a gravelled garage area and high fence, they've overcome this and given the house some privacy. The curved path works really well, leading visitors to the front door at the side of the house. Inside, this once run-down building is now immaculate. John and Jackie have really gone all out to create a comfortable and luxurious family home, finished to the highest possible standard. They got the quality they wanted, but at a price. I do think the kitchen would have been better with the eating area near the window, but it's still an impressive room, and I'm glad they went for the black granite worktops, which are more en vogue at the moment. But getting this top spec look isn't cheap.
Well, I have to say, it is very, very luxurious, the house. It looks like it's cost a lot of money.
Well, it has. Yeah. It has.
I'm not surprised.
But I think we've spent the money well.
The good news is they've managed to bring the project in under budget. They've spent a little more on the bathrooms and the kitchen at £12,500. Decorating and finishes rose to £10,300. They spent an extra £1,500 on the garden. The electrics and plumbing were exactly £11,100. But their labour and materials came in under budget at just £35,000. Fees remained the same at £7,000. They didn't use any of their contingency of £5,000, so their total spend came in £8,000 under budget at £82,800. John and Jackie were lucky that they kept their original budget for flats, as this has meant coming in under. But had they not gone so far down the luxury route, they could have done it for even less.
Has this got personal, this house?
I'd be lying if I said no, but I think it's got personal to the right degree.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure with this particular development that it needs to be as luxurious. I mean, it's a fabulous house. It's got gorgeous high ceilings. It's got a lovely big garden, but it's always going to be limited by its downsides.
We could have perhaps spent less, but it's also a bit of a statement product for us because, they sent, we're going to do a lot more of these, hopefully. We can find them.
So this was a bit of a show home, so you went a bit further than you would have done.
Yeah, but I think, again, we are fussy,
I don't know
aren't we?
whether we will go any less, though, with our standards.
John and Jackie firmly believe that everything they've done will give them a £300,000 asking price. Now they just have to hope the agents agree.
First impressions may be a little detrimental.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the main problem, overcoming the public car park. This is a nice room, good for entertaining.
No expense spared, I would imagine.
Exceptional quality, really, really good room.
I think this property could achieve £285,000.
I'd value this property at £280,000.
Now, we have had two agents round, and they've come in at £280,000 and £285,000. So the average of those valuations is £282,500, which, if you managed to sell it at that figure, you'd make nearly £100,000 profit, which is pretty impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, in the current climate, I think that's excellent.
Yeah, good going,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind two of those every year.
No, I don't suppose many people would. That would be amazing. It's certainly a a very impressive result.
Yeah, I mean, we'll perhaps market it around the 300 mark to start with.
Either just under 3 or just over 3.
Well,
we
we're
thought,
still
didn't
at
we?
310, I think, aren't
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously you can put it on the market at any level you want.
Yeah.
The key is to actually get a buyer. It is quite a niche market, this, because it's an expensive 3-bedroom house. Someone's going to have to put their neck on the line and say, I want it so much, I'm going to pay the extra for it.
As an old house goes, it's coming with lots of guarantees, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
it's that client out there that wants that.
Yeah.
That standard
Yeah.
we've put in.
It's just finding that particular buyer.
Even though about half their profit comes from a rising market in the 2 years before they even started work, John and Jackie have still done well. Now all they have to do is sell it.
Super garden, isn't it?
The wall's just a bit shade too dark.
This is a lovely room. Just got a warm feel about it.
Wow.
This is super.
It's a proper size family bathroom, isn't it?
Space for wardrobes. You're a bit tight, aren't you?
It's probably a house inborn that you'd never know is here.
There's no proper front door.
This house in another location will be well worth its money.
So do you think next time round you would try and go for something a bit more straightforward that didn't have quite so many issues to it?
Doubt it.
Doubt it. No, I mean, it just depends what
Knowing us.
comes up. To see this place 6 months ago and to walk in there now, you can't help but be proud of it,
Be
can
shocked.
you? Yeah,
No.
it's great.
No, that's
Yeah.
right.
Unfortunately, 2 months later, John and Jackie are still waiting for their £300,000 asking price. And in Lancashire, Paul and Simon are determined to get the mill finished by Christmas.
John and Jackie and Paul and Simon bravely took on 2 really awkward properties. But although on paper they're 2 huge success stories, there's still no actual money in the bank. With developing, it's important to remember it's about the whole package, not just a nice interior. Location is crucial.
Next week, I'm with 2 couples who don't really know what it is they've taken on.
What I'm worried about is I'm not seeing any brick.
Just give me complicated questions.
Okay, well,
An easier one, please.